If you've ever taken a philosophy or political science class, you've probably come across Thomas Hobbes and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. They're often painted as rivals or opposites, and that depiction is often attributed to their conflicting views on human nature. But they do agree on one thing: the starting point. Both philosophers look at what life might be for humans in the state of nature. The state of nature is just what it sounds like. It's the time before society and civilization, back when we first emerged as a species. It's not even like the Flintstones, because they had a society set up. The state of nature is what life would be for us as humans before literally anything resembling development took place. What do you suppose this life would be like? We already did a video on what Hobbes thinks, but let's sum it up with his famous quote that life for man in the state of nature would be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. With no laws or society, humanity would be in a constant state of war with one another, and our lives would be marked by violence and murder. But Rousseau thought differently. Now, if you're like me, you might have thought Rousseau talks about human nature in his most famous work, On the Social Contract. And while there is some mention of the state of nature, the real meat and potatoes can be found in two other works: The Discourse on the Origin of Inequality and The State of War. Let's start by having Rousseau paint a picture of what an average person would be up to in the state of nature, according to him. I see him satisfying his hunger under an oak tree, quenching his thirst at the first stream, finding his bed at the foot of the same tree that supplied his meal, and thus all his needs are satisfied. So this is a pretty far cry from Hobbes' picture of a barbarian out there killing other people. Rousseau's natural person seems content and with relatively few needs. Now, the discrepancy here might be because Hobbes is viewing the natural man through his own biased post-societal lens, according to Rousseau. Because Hobbes lived in a society where you have ideas such as honor and success, a society where you own your own place and you own a bunch of goods. It's a society where there's more than just the three basic needs of food, water, and shelter. The natural man has not been corrupted by such things. They only know sleep, food, and water, the bare necessities. So really, there's not going to be a conflict over property because there isn't really property to begin with. Now, Rousseau is not naive, and he admits that there are possibilities of individual conflict here and there. But considering how much more large-scale conflicts are in quote-unquote civilized societies, we really gotta be wondering which is more barbaric. I find it conceivable that in the quarrels that can arise in the state of nature, and where there is no one to arbitrate, an irritated man could sometimes kill another, either openly or by surprise. Thus, a quarrel begins and ends in a single day, and there can be fights and murders, but never or very rarely lengthy enmities and wars. So yeah, maybe there's a fight over an orange or something, but the biggest wars in human history were not about a fight over food, water, or shelter. They were often about ideas, abstract ideas that the natural person would not even know about. At this time, I want to talk about three important qualities of this natural person that Rousseau mentions in his work. And these qualities are not just limited to the natural person. They can be found even today, which might say something to the effect of human nature. The first quality is that of free will and the ability to choose. In any animal, I see nothing but an ingenious machine, to which nature has given senses in order for it to renew its strength and protect itself, to a certain point, from all that tends to destroy or disturb it. I am aware of precisely the same thing in the human machine, with the difference that nature alone does everything in the operations of an animal, whereas man contributes as a free agent to his own operations. So we're not always going to act on impulse. Granted, sometimes it's hard to ignore the candy they strategically place at the checkout line for grocery stores, but we also can show restraint and choose not to indulge. This isn't the case for animals who will act on instinct alone. Although, I don't know, I think my cat is pretty smart. She rations out her wet food and doesn't just eat it all at once. So maybe she's choosing to show some restraint, who knows? Now, the second quality of importance is what Rousseau calls the faculty of self-perfection. Essentially, this is just our need to self-improve, to get better. Now, this sounds like a good thing, right? But unfortunately, this quality of self-perfection could have led us to leave that state of nature. We were no longer satisfied with the relaxing, peaceful life. We wanted to do better for ourselves. We wanted permanent shelters, clothes, tools, consistent food and water, land, power, society, law, and you get the point. It may be something that could be considered good today, but for Rousseau, it draws us out of that peaceful life in the state of nature. This distinctive and almost unlimited faculty is the source of all man's misfortunes. That this is what, by dint of time, draws him out of that original condition in which he would pass tranquil and innocent days, and eventually makes him a tyrant over himself and nature. So everything is good in the original state of nature. It's peaceful, we all just eat and drink what nature gives us, and then we choose a branch we like and snooze off. But then this faculty makes us want more and more until we're out of that state. Now, if this is inherent in us, and the state of nature is kinda doomed from the start in a way, is Hobbes right then? Well, we still have our last quality of human nature to work with, and that is pity. Because really, Hobbes paints a pretty gruesome picture of humans fighting humans and being hateful of one another. And while we can definitely see examples of that today, we also see examples of the opposite. We see concern for our fellow human. We see charity. We see generosity. We all have loved ones we care about. It is therefore quite certain that pity is a natural sentiment, which, by moderating in each individual the activity of the love of oneself, contributes to the mutual preservation of the entire species. So with these three qualities, besides maybe the second one, we see human nature not as pessimistically as Hobbes saw it, taking the fact that the natural human doesn't have these desires that society has forced upon us, and we could see where Rousseau is coming from. But this debate has raged on, and when you learn about these guys in your class, you don't really get a winner declared. Or at least I hope your professor doesn't and leaves it up to you guys. And that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna let you guys duke it out in the comments below to decide which theory you prefer. Me personally, I think it's a bit of both, less of a dichotomy and more on a spectrum. It's like looking at humanity today. You get a lot of good, but also a lot of bad. But hey, if you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, be sure to like and share it. Subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when a new video drops, and I wish you all a beautiful rest of your day.